Cenk, huge fan, says Julie. Just confused as to who you support sometimes. Yeah, how about that, Cenk? I mean, isn't that a good thing that we don't know exactly who you're going to support sometime?
Yeah.
Uh,
So I'll clarify here, but I think it's generally a good thing. So I'll explain. So first of all, in the things that you said, Mark, I got so much to say already. Number one, you said the canned applause is better, right? Because you don't have
yes.
a real studio audience. Well, that was one of my favorite things about Trump's latest arrangement is when he said, this the studio audience, the debate we had, they went wild for me. There was no studio audience, just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like, and I mean, I love this new term that people came up with, and it's really true: sane washing, right?
Yeah.
Like he's insane, but we have to pretend that he's not insane because we don't want to hurt the feelings of folks, etc. Right? And so, and then in New Mexico, he came and he said, and this was great about Trump. Wait a minute, which side am I on? No, hold on. Uh, he said, I'm here because I'm having trouble with the Latinos and the Hispanics, so they told me to come here. I'm like, oh, you're not supposed to say that out loud, you schmuck. Okay. I'm sorry for the unfortunate phrase here, but he has verbal diarrhea. Like he just can't contain himself. Whatever's
Right.
on
He
top of
says
his head.
exactly what comes to mind. That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
And that's both his great advantage and disadvantage, right? That's partly what his fans love about him, right? They're like, oh, he's a real guy. He just says whatever the hell comes to his mind, which normal politicians don't do because it's not that smart. So, on the other hand, he also admits terrible things 24/7, including his desire to terminate the Constitution. So, look, so as you can begin to tell, no, I'm definitely against Donald Trump. But the reason that people get confused sometimes is because we do an actual news show where we criticize everyone in power. So that includes Democrats, Republicans, whoever else it might be. We also give credit where credit is due. So we'll point out some of the things that Joe Biden did that are forgotten that were really good, some positive things that Kamala Harris did that fly under the radar, and then criticize them appropriately when it's called upon. And with Trump, the reason I'm so massively against Trump is because it's a target-rich environment. So like
Sure.
he really doesn't leave you with any choice but to support his opponent because he's so nuts.
I'm seeing all kinds of questions for you. Some of them are a little bit extreme. I'll get to them if I possibly can. But it does appear that in this candidate, Trump, you have a guy who is uh, not afraid of saying things that are really the sort of policy decisions or strategies that would really turn the economy on its side. He loves this tariffs thing, and the more people explain how crippling tariffs would be, the more he leans into tariffs. He really likes to be a contrarian that way, and that's just on the economy. He has demonized the left and demonized his opposition in ways that we've never seen. I mean, the latest is, of course, calling out Liz Cheney, and it's suggested based on the phraseology. We'll play you the clip a little bit later that he was really calling for her to face an execution, a firing squad. Again, these even if he didn't literally mean that or say it literally, these to even sort of suggest it or hint at it, these things are a kind of politics we've never seen in the modern age.
Yeah, Mark, that's exactly right, and that's a great example of how what people might be confused as to quote unquote which side I'm on, because I hope I'm on the side of truth. So let's break that down. So he says, she's so pro-war, but at the same time, well, what if she was staring down the barrel of this gun, etc. And he creates this like very significant visual about how she could get killed, right? So then some folks on the left say, oh, he was talking about executing her, but he wasn't. He was saying that she's such a war hawk, but she would never normally go into war, etc. And that's true about her dad, for example. I mean, he had 4 or 5 deferments that he blamed on minorities, and then he started every war we could imagine. But at the same time, so I would say, hey, our side, bring it down. He didn't say execute her, right? And then so people go, oh, so you're for Trump? No, you can't say things like that in this context. It's not normal for a politician to talk about another politician facing down the barrel of a gun, etc. And especially with all the talk of violence and 41% of Republicans thinking that it might be time for violence in this country, etc., it's deeply irresponsible. So when the Trump people say, it's no big deal, no, it is a big deal. No, that's crazy to say. So we both have to contain ourselves from being so biased in either direction. And with Trump, when people overdo it, like when Debbie Dingell said he's going to start internment camps, he never said that. Don't, because then you're taking away credibility when you actually talk about the crazy things he does say. Then people don't believe it.
Yeah, this is really interesting and so true. And I guess we're late to the party on sort of a lot of this rhetoric in some ways, because I just think there is an oversteering on the part of the left when they jump on this stuff. But by the same token, it's like you don't need to plant more evidence at the crime scene. The guy is already, lawless. Michael, this is true. The kind of, and you really are out there in the, Michael covers these Trump rallies and really, rubs shoulders with these people. And you've seen this rhetoric up close. I do think, for example, the demonization of the opposition and calling the press the enemy of the people. By the way, that's one of the nicer things he said about the press. He's really, and you're the press in those rallies. This is a kind of rhetoric that we're just not used to seeing.
Well, right. And I think whenever his legacy is written, whether it's after his next term or after Tuesday, we're gonna look at the most lasting damage he has done, and that is to the Fourth Estate. That is to what we do, and sowing seeds of doubt constantly. We are the people that are supposed to be skeptical of what these people are saying, and to steer people in other directions to unedited, unresearched, unreported news written by people who did not come up through journalism. And I'm not, obviously there are going to be exceptions to what I'm saying, but I think that has, at a time when local newspapers are going out of business for reasons of progress, I guess, in some ways, but we don't have that last check. And he's saying that even when that box is checked and when people are looking at the balance that we try and put in there, that we're even lying. So I think that's going to be the worst part of his legacy. To what Cenk was saying, and I heard most of it, I would have agreed with Cenk 4 years ago. I would have disagreed with him about a lot of things, I'm sure, 4 years ago. I'm sure I did. But I don't know anymore. I don't know that we can't extrapolate from the things that he says to look at what those extremes are. I don't think that he even knows. So is Debbie Dingell right? I mean, not in terms of quoting people that Donald Trump is going to start internment camps all over the country. But is she right to think that, hey, maybe there are people in his circle that want to do that and will push him aside and convince him to do it? So and he's not going to fight back at it. I understand what Cenk's saying. It's not a fact, so I wouldn't run with it. But it's also not fantasy, and that's the problem with Donald Trump and covering him.
He is surrounded, Cenk, by some very extreme people. I mean, Bannon, Musk is a true extremist. In fact, Musk has said, hey, there's going to be a lot of pain here in the short term when a Trump presidency actually gets started. I mean, that's typically not what you hear from politicians. But there are also other acolytes who will now inhabit the White House, right? He'll now be surrounded by people who really know the game. He didn't have that in 2016. It was more performative. I think he felt the theater of playing president was to surround yourself with all of these people who are experienced Washingtonians. Whereas now I think it's going to be a different game.
Yeah. So the short term that Elon Musk is referring to is all 4 years that he's in charge. It's going to be utter chaos. He's going to try so many different crazy things. And people have to keep in mind, this is an excellent reason to vote against him. They've tried to hold him accountable in 18 different ways. And if he gets reelected, it's over. It failed. There is no accountability left. So he will be able to do anything and everything he wants. What are you going to do? Try to impeach him? Try to arrest him? None of that's going to work. It didn't even work when you had him before. So, the lack of accountability is going to be horrific in the next 4 years. But actually, Musk is wrong because the damage is more long-term. So, for example, Trump spent like a drunk sailor when he was in charge, and what I mean by spend in that case was not all of it, but a lot of it went to over $2 trillion of it went to corporate tax cuts, and so he wound up adding $8.4 trillion to the debt. And I need you to understand the context of that. The debt was only 20 trillion when he came in. So he had about 40% to the debt in just 4 years. And he kept interest rates so low that it aggravated inflation when inflation came around. Why? Because he wanted things to be good when he was president. Oh, I had a great economy. Yeah, but that creates a sugar high, and that explodes on our head later with both the debt and inflation. So it is massive problems in that regard. And in the things that Michael's talking about, I draw a line in a place where I find to be reasonable, and I do get pushback from both sides on this, both sides of this debate. I say that he's a fascist, but not a Nazi. So I think that there is a distinction. Nazi means, hey, we're putting people in gas chambers and we're on our way to slaughtering folks, right? And on a mass scale. And so he hasn't done that yet, and he hasn't shown an indication that he's going to put people in gas chambers, right? So that's too far, and that's a thing that should be reserved for actual Nazis, right? Now, having said that, why do I call him a fascist? And what's the distinction? Well, when you try to overturn an election with a fake elector plot to try to stay in office after you lost, well, that's a fascist move, right? I mean, this is kind of literal. When you say, let's terminate the Constitution because I lost. And he actually literally said that. I debate conservatives all the time. And when I hit them with that line, they can't believe it. And then when they realize it's true, they're like, I've had several conservatives go, oh, I didn't know that. That does make me rethink it a little bit. It's amazing that people don't know that. He said we should terminate the Constitution. So that's what fascists do. Fascists say things like we're poisoning the blood of our country. That's not an accident. I mean, you don't just pull that quote randomly, right? That's a Nazi quote, and he's using it. So Sandra Day O'Connor had a great line, and that was during the Bush Cheney era. She said when asked if she's concerned about them heading in a fascist direction, she said we should avoid those beginnings so that we could avoid those ends.
Michael, he does speak the language of an autocrat in waiting, a fascist in waiting. You have to unmute, pal.
There you got me now. If you look at the meaning of the word Nazi, right? What is the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany, right? So there is a nationalism that infects it. I agree with Cenk that this isn't Nazi, this isn't death camps, this is not to that degree. But fascism is pretty accurate, and the things that he wants to do in an autocratic way, and the people, look at the people that he admires around the world, from Putin to Netanyahu to Orban. I mean, these people are autocrats in the greatest sense of the word. I mean, I guess of all of them, the democracies in Hungary and Israel are obviously stronger than what you have in Russia. But by the same token, he could choose other people around the world with whom to align himself, and he's chosen those three people who, however you look at them and whatever you think their motivations are, there's a real likeness in the way they've employed parts of fascism, parts of autocracy, and I think he admires that, and he likes a strong man. He has said it himself. He likes that sort of that lightning rod of a personality. We knew that in his first term. We actually knew that before his first term, and we saw it play out in his first term, and we've seen it as he has been a candidate. Look, even in the way he runs this campaign, there's plenty of time afterwards. So whether I'm right or wrong about this, I still think he's running a terrible campaign because he is talking in the exact same ways that he was speaking before. And by doing that, he is saying, I don't want the other people in my tent. I just want a strong tent of the people that are listening to me and like what I am saying. And that to me speaks volumes about the kind of president he'll be in his second term.
It is true that we talk about how extreme his rhetoric is. His extreme rhetoric plays to his base, but it doesn't broaden his appeal, Cenk.
No, but there is something we've got to challenge ourselves on, right? Which is the reason why he's currently tied. He won a presidential election. That's stunning. I
Sure.
mean, I mean, this guy grabbing women by the genitalia. We all know it. A thousand unbelievable, unimaginable things, and he won an election, and he's on the edge of winning another one.
And he
And by
engineered
the
a
way, he
coup,
barely
and he
lost.
may win another one. That's amazing to me. I mean, you only have to
Yeah,
stop at the coup, as far as I'm concerned.
No, of course, that's a good point.
Go
yeah.
ahead,
And
Cenk,
guys,
sorry.
think about it. Uh, so he only lost by 43,000 votes in 3 swing states in the last election, and that was after he butchered COVID. And all those people died, and he tried to pretend that it was no big deal because he was worried about how he was going to look, and he still barely lost. And this time he tried a coup and he still died. So do not close your mind to why he's popular, because otherwise you'll miss it. You can't just say everyone else is a bad guy, they're all irrational, etc. So the thing that is animating most of his voters is that they hate the establishment, and they think that the establishment has been screwing them their whole life. They don't believe them. They don't believe the media. They don't believe the politicians. And they're not entirely wrong about that. And that is why I say I'm bilingual. I speak establishment and populist. I speak left wing and right wing. So I'm on the left. Nobody's confused about how that I'm on the left. Actually, some people are these days, but but both because they think, oh wait, since he speaks populist, maybe he's pro-Trump. And then some on the extreme left think, oh no, Cenk, he's way too right wing. Okay, so okay, but anyways, but guys, just because they're supporting Trump doesn't mean that all of those people, 50% of the country, are racist, fascist, sexist, etc. They're supporting it. A lot of them are supporting him because of the establishment is fighting him, and so they view him as the only populist option. Now, of course, I think he's a fake populist, and he's in it for himself, and he's a con man. And as a true populist, that bothers me even more because
Sure.
he's ruining the idea of populism, which I think is overall correct. So that's why he's so popular. And if the Democratic Party if Tim Walz is at the top of the ticket, for example, and he had free reign to run as he ran in Minnesota, then we have a little populist streak, and that's all we would need to be able to win these elections. And of course, if you actually did some populism, that would be amazing. But that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, you can. That seems to be indisputable, Michael. That many are just feeling as though the system has. They feel, I think, disenchanted with two things: the media, obviously, mainstream media, et cetera, easy kind of a demon, and the system has also been demonized. Right? It's really viewed as an institution that oftentimes just doesn't address the people's concerns. So, from that standpoint, you do see where this outsider, the first time, was able to get a lot of support. It's the second time that kind of surprises me, you know?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen what kind of support he's going to end up with. But the fact that it's close, as Cenk said, speaks to that. I don't, it's a longer conversation than we have time for here, but it's an interesting one. My time spent with these people has shown me a lot more than how we tend to condense it. I don't think it's the establishment that I think there's a part of it is the fun of it, is owning the libs. It's these elitists who they see as better educated than they are, living in cities, so better cultured than they are. You can say that's establishment. I guess I would need a better definition of what establishment is, but that is what motivates a lot of these people. So much, and I say this a lot, but when I go to these rallies and they talk about, oh, there were so many empty seats in there, or people were leaving early, a lot of them don't even go in. A lot of them are there not for the game, they're there for the tailgate. And so it's to sit around and wear your F Joe Biden t-shirts and your, Kamala was whatever t-shirts and everything that disparages people on the left and says great things about Trump. I don't care what he says. I'm proud he was arrested. All of that stuff. He's a victim. He's a victim. It's a cult of personality as well. And a lot of it is a cult. And by no means, I mean, Cenk's absolutely right. Just because you vote for Donald Trump doesn't mean you're a racist. But as one civil rights leader once said to me, is that you look at who all the racists are voting for, and that tells you something very often. And I think that most of the people in established racism in this country are voting on the Republican side this year.
You've made the point here before, Michael, that, people go to these rallies and they want the show. Oftentimes they're there for the
Right.
show. And I said the other day, it's like one big tailgate party to a lot of them. So you separate those who are politically animated from those who just want the show. In our last seconds, Panda asks, Cenk, explain the early voting, though. Women are smashing expectations. This is particularly news out of Pennsylvania. Early voting data, Cenk and Michael, has highlighted two potentially worrying trends for Trump. And they are essentially tied to the fact that women are showing up in big numbers, but also seniors, people over 65, are showing up in huge numbers in early voting in Pennsylvania, and they're voting Democrat, which is not typically something that seniors did. Guys, in our last seconds, comment on that. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so this is the most unpredictable election of my lifetime. You guys both know I love doing predictions. I got nothing here. Every poll is contradictory. Every number, every trend is contradictory. So you're right about Pennsylvania. At the same time, I think we're seeing terrible numbers out of Nevada and North Carolina. So what in the world's going on? I don't know. And so Trump is now bleeding out a little bit on senior citizens, to your point, Mark. And also he's starting to lose a little bit in non-college educated white voters, his base. But on the other hand, he's gaining in among minorities. I mean, there's just no way of knowing who's going to win this race.
We're not sure he's gaining among minorities. In other words, the numbers among minorities, if you see the turnout, more black men than expected have been turning out for Harris, so they're happy about that. If she is able to turn out the vote, her margins should be good. If she's not able to, then Cenk, you're right, and those numbers will prevail. But if she's able, and that's what they're trying to do with the great field operation that they have, a better field operation than Trump, they're trying to do that. So yeah, it's an unusual election, but I think if we look at the election of 22, which is the last sort of national election we had, women came out in huge numbers. It was right after the Dobbs decision. That didn't end in 2022, so it's not surprising, Mark.
The only thing I'd say to that is that, Trump wasn't on the ticket in 2022. And
well,
I think,
he wasn't, but that's also energizing for people too. I mean, so there's probably
that's true.
Yeah,
and I'm losing the connection here, so I'm going to let you guys finish because it's really
well. We're
choppy.
done. We're pretty well done anyway. But Michael, we so appreciate you always. Okay, yeah. We'll see you again soon. Michael Shure, everybody. Cenk, as we finish up with you, go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, last quick thing here. So, you're both right. Trump wasn't on the ballot in 2022. That hurts the Republicans. He's the one that drives out voters, right? On the other hand, the fact that we switched from Biden to Kamala Harris might just put it a little bit more over the top in getting women out to vote, right? And so, I mean, it puts it over the top in a lot of ways because she's infinitely better than Biden as a candidate. But with women voters in particular, because at the end of the day, whoever turns out both their base and the unlikely voters more will win. And the big batch of unlikely voters on our side are women. So if she wins, it'll definitely be because an army of women came out to vote in ways that people did not expect. And that puts her over the top to win. And that would be a great story. That would be a beautiful story.
It's going to be a wrestling match after this thing finishes, should Trump not prevail. Right, Cenk? It's going to be close anyway, as you've said, it would seem. And it's going to be a legal wrestling match. I don't know, apart from the legal side, because they've always got a plan. The GOP is trying to game the system now. I've never seen sort of an articulated strategy about cheating in a presidential election. I mean, like, we're going to protest these votes. We're not going to certify here. There's really a plan in place to not certify before you even had an election. It's a remarkable thing. I understand there's always been gerrymandering and dark money and all of these different ways to cheat the system. But now we're articulating ways to really cheat, like to suppress the people's voice in ways that extend beyond just voter disenfranchisement.
Yeah. So, okay, you're making me say one more thing.
Okay, this is the last thing. Go ahead.
Okay. So, real quick. About 2 weeks ago, 10 to 14 days ago, you're seeing a lot of stories about Democratic insiders going, the internal polling's not that great, getting bad stories out of Nevada. Then she's a couple of days ago pulls out her ads from North Carolina looking bad. And then in the last 4 or 5 days, all of a sudden we're starting to get reports from Trump camp that the internal numbers don't look good, and they're really worried about turnout in Pennsylvania. But here's something that's interesting and telling today. Over the last 24 to 48 hours, the Trump team has been screaming about how the election is rigged. You don't scream that the election is rigged if you think you're going to win it, right? If you think you're going to easily win, you don't go around saying it's rigged, it's rigged. So maybe that's good news, but there's no way of knowing until the numbers start to come in Pennsylvania.
The more they scream, I agree, the more their internal numbers must be dire. But as you said, we don't really know what will actually happen, regardless of what their internal numbers are. So
hey, you know what? Young Turks, Election Day. We're going to start out with Michael Shure. He's going to be our big analyst. And so if you can, check it out there. It's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, it sure is. And you guys do great stuff. You think Texas could flip?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
I mean, I hope so, but I don't think so.
Yeah, right. I'm hoping to. But we're so close, and I just don't see it. Cenk, we'll see you later. And thank you always. You're always responding when we put up the bat beam. Cenk Uygur, everybody, from TYT. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.